In every abandoned hospital, there's always at least one room that locals refuse to talk about. A place where stories get buried and secrets fester. In Bright Falls Psychiatric Hospital, that room is room 13. A room that doesn't appear on any blueprint. A room that, by all accounts, shouldn't even exist. Tonight, you're about to find out why demolition crews, security guards, and paranormal investigators refuse to step inside that decaying building ever again. Welcome to Tales of the Dark. Before the hallways start to whisper your name, make sure you subscribe to Tales of the Dark and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. Let's start with the history they tried to erase. Bright Falls Psychiatric Hospital first opened its doors in the early 1970s. Its official purpose was to treat the most severe psychiatric cases in the region. But it didn't take long for it to gain a very different kind of reputation. A reputation built on a steady stream of unexplained patient deaths, blood-curdling screams echoing through the corridors late at night, and nurses who flat out refused to work the night shift. The most common complaint from the staff. Patients were constantly seen talking to someone who wasn't there. An invisible visitor who seemed to move from room to room. Locals have long claimed that the building was cursed from the moment its foundation was laid. Construction workers reported hearing disembodied voices coming from the unfinished basement, walking into pockets of intense, unnatural cold, and finding their tools had vanished, only to reappear in impossible places. But the strangest and most unsettling rumor of all, the one that suggests the hospital was built directly over an older, forgotten burial ground. A mass grave where the unclaimed bodies from a previous pandemic were unceremoniously dumped during the 1910 outbreak. No signs, no markers, no respect, just bones and sorrow, sealed forever beneath layers of concrete and steel. Now, let's jump forward to 1996. After years of escalating problems, Bright Falls Psychiatric Hospital finally shut down. The official reason was a vague series of unexplained incidents that were never publicly clarified. The gates were locked, the windows were boarded, and for 2 decades, the building was left to rot, untouched by human hands. It became a local legend, a dare for teenagers, but nothing more. Then, the town council approved its demolition. A construction crew was hired to tear it down and clear the land. They lasted a grand total of 3 nights. On their second night, at precisely 2:58 a.m., 2 workers doing a final sweep heard something that made their blood run cold. It was the sound of crying. A soft, desperate weeping coming from a section of the main hallway where there were no open rooms, just a long, solid wall. The crying sounded like a woman, begging softly, repeating a single word over and over again, "Please, please." One of the workers, a man named Daniel, later told investigators, it wasn't an echo. It didn't sound far away. It was coming from right behind the wall. It was coming from a door that wasn't there yesterday. They followed the sound, their flashlight beams cutting through the thick dust and darkness. And there it was. A rotting, water-stained wooden door that had definitely not been there the night before. Fixed to the center was a small, rusted metal plate with a number engraved on it. 13. Stunned, the crew supervisor immediately pulled out the original hospital blueprints. He checked them once, twice, 3 times. The hospital had rooms 12 and 14, but there was absolutely no room 13 on the plans. It was just a solid wall. The mystery deepens with the door that moves. The next morning, when the shaken crew returned to the site, the door was gone. The wall was solid again, as if it had never been there. They tried to rationalize it, convincing themselves that stress, exhaustion, and the creepy atmosphere had made them hallucinate the whole thing. They went about their work, trying to forget what they'd seen and heard, until the 3rd night. The crying returned, but this time, it was louder, clearer, and it was coming from the opposite end of the same corridor. Terrified, but drawn by a morbid curiosity, they followed the sound once more. And there it was. The door was back. Same peeling paint, same rotting wood, same rusted plate with the number 13. But something was different. The hinges on the door frame were freshly polished, gleaming in the dim light of their flashlights, as if someone had oiled them, as if someone had opened that door very, very recently. A portable security camera they had set up in the hallway captured only 1 single second of footage before it glitched and died. That 1 second showed the door to room 13 opening, just a crack, completely on its own. Then, the entire hallway in the camera feed went pitch black. The demolition was halted. Investigators were brought in. During the initial sweep and cleanup of the derelict building, they made a chilling discovery inside the old staff room. A locker had collapsed from rust and decay, spilling its contents onto the floor. Buried under moldy uniforms and rusted medical equipment was a small leather-bound diary. It was covered in mold and mildew, but the writing inside was just barely legible. It belonged to a nurse, Helena Ward, and the entries were dated from 1978, almost 2 decades before the hospital closed. Her entries paint a disturbing picture of the strange events that plagued Brightfall long before it was abandoned. One entry read, "The patients on the East Wing keep pointing at the empty space on the wall between rooms 12 and 14. They say a sad lady lives in the wall." A few weeks later, she wrote, "Night shifts are unbearable now. We all hear a woman crying near that wall. It starts around 3 a.m. Management tells us it's just the pipes." A later, more frantic entry said, "Dr. Halden cornered me today. He looked terrified. He said that room was sealed for a reason, that something happened in there when the hospital first opened. He told me, if you ever hear the crying, don't answer her. Whatever you do, don't let her know you can hear her." The very last entry in the diary was a single, terrifying line. The ink smudged, as if written in a hurry. They opened it again. God help us. The abandoned project claimed its first victim soon after. A demolition worker named Luis, skeptical of the ghost stories, decided to stay behind after his shift to investigate room 13 for himself. He wanted to prove to everyone that it was all just a prank or a mass hallucination. His final radio transmission to his supervisor is the stuff of nightmares. The recording begins with heavy breathing, then Luce's shaky voice. "Okay, I'm here. The door is open. The whole door is wide open. There's someone inside. She's just standing there, facing the wall." The transmission cuts to a burst of deafening static. Then, complete and total silence. When the police arrived less than 15 minutes later, they found no trace of Luis. All they found was his heavy-duty flashlight, still on, its beam pointing down a dark, empty hallway. There were no signs of a struggle, no forced entry, no footprints leading in or out, and no door. The wall between rooms 12 and 14 was solid once again. The only evidence that anything had happened at all was a faint, wet smear of handprints on the plaster, right where the phantom door should have been. As a final measure, paranormal investigators decided to rig the hospital with audio and video equipment for one last night. They placed recorders and cameras throughout the building, hoping to capture definitive proof of the haunting. One digital audio recorder, placed on the floor near the spot where room 13 would appear, captured the most compelling evidence. Over several hours it recorded the distinct sounds of soft crying, the slow, deliberate pacing of footsteps on a floor that shouldn't exist, and then a faint female whisper, so clear it sounds like she's speaking directly into the microphone. "Please, don't leave me here." At exactly 3:17 a.m., the soft crying suddenly contorted into a horrifying, inhuman scream, a sound filled with so much rage and agony that it overloaded the recorder's microphone. At that exact moment, every single piece of electronic equipment in the entire hospital, every camera, every recorder, every sensor cut off at once. Nothing about room 13 made any sense. Not the sounds, not the impossible moving door, not the disappearances of those who dared to look closer. The official investigation was closed, citing insufficient evidence. But what they found, or rather, what they didn't find, was only the beginning of the story. In part 2, we will reveal what historical records and a secret confession finally uncovered about what happened inside that hidden chamber, and the horrifying reason why it was sealed in the first place. Don't go anywhere. Subscribe to Tales of the Dark and click that bell icon. You're not going to want to miss this. Part 2 begins now. We all know abandoned hospitals are creepy, but what if one was built with a secret? A secret so terrifying, it was bricked up and forgotten, wiped from all official records. Tonight, we're going to Brightfall Hospital, a place that holds more than just ghosts. It holds a door to something else, and we're going to open it. For decades, the story of Brightfall Hospital was simple, a place of healing that fell into decay. But after its demolition was mysteriously halted, a retired architect came forward, his hands trembling as he presented a hidden blueprint. This wasn't the floor plan the city had. This one was different. It showed a sealed chamber, sandwiched between rooms 12 and 14. A room with no windows, no door on any public plan, just a single bed, and heavy restraints bolted directly into the concrete walls. And there, scrawled in faded red ink, was a name and a chilling instruction. Elara, do not open. Who was Elara? The hospital archives were a dead end. No family, no history, no official documents. It was as if she never existed before walking through those doors in 1973. But the staff who worked there remembered the rumors. They called her the Silent Woman. Elara never spoke a word to the nurses or doctors. She refused to eat if anyone was watching. She'd sit for hours, staring at the wall, and would only sleep if every single light was left on. But the other patients told a different story. They insisted she wasn't silent at all. At night, they'd hear her whispering through the walls, her voice a faint, desperate plea. Some heard muffled crying coming from the vents. One patient, a man in the room next door, swore he heard her calling for help when no staff were anywhere near her sealed door. Another claimed she saw Elara's reflection in mirrors, a fleeting, sorrowful face, even when Elara was locked away in her room. The stories grew stranger, darker. Then came the incident, an event so disturbing it was erased from all records. All anyone knows is that afterward, the hospital administration sealed her away in that hidden room, and she was never seen again. Some say she died in there, alone in the dark. Others whisper that she simply vanished. The truth was buried with the hospital. Years later, when investigators finally broke through the bricked-up wall of the hidden chamber, they braced themselves for dust, decay, and maybe the remains of a forgotten patient. What they found was far more unsettling. The air was cold, but not stale. On the grimy wall, there was a fresh, perfect handprint, as if someone had just leaned against it. In the center of the room, a lone wooden chair was positioned facing the door, as if someone had been sitting there, waiting. From the vents, the team heard it, a faint, almost inaudible crying sound that seemed to echo from deep within the building's metallic lungs. And then they saw it. On the floor, half hidden under the rusted bed frame, was a modern, heavy-duty flashlight. It was the same model that belonged to Louise, a construction worker who had gone missing on the site weeks earlier. One of the investigators picked it up. The batteries were still warm, as if it had been turned on just minutes before they arrived. The discovery sent a chill through the team, but it was what they found next that truly terrified them. On the concrete wall, hidden behind the head of the bed, were scratch marks. They were carved deep into the stone, gouged out by desperate fingernails. The scratches formed two frantic words: "Let me out." It was a horrifying sight, a final plea from a tormented soul. Below those large, desperate letters were more words, scratched with a different, much weaker hand. The letters were smaller, shakier, barely visible against the rough surface. They read, "Don't listen to her. It's not human." Two voices, one wall, one begging for freedom, the other warning them away. Who were they supposed to believe? The final piece of the puzzle comes from the last investigative team to enter Brightfall. This crew was equipped with body cameras, determined to document every inch of the decaying structure. The footage is grainy, the audio filled with static and the sound of their own nervous breathing. As they walked down the main corridor, passing the area where the hidden room was, their clocks read exactly 3:17 a.m., Suddenly, the audio picks up that same faint crying they'd heard before, but this time it's clearer. Then comes a sound that makes them all freeze, a soft rhythmic knocking. 1, 2, 3. It's coming from the wall where a door should not be. Then, a woman's voice whispers, so close, it sounds like it's right beside the microphone. Can you hear me now? The cameraman spins around, and that's when they see it. An old, dark wooden door has appeared in the wall, a door that wasn't there seconds ago. It looks ancient, warped, as if it's been part of the hospital since the very beginning. The cameraman, mesmerized and terrified, takes a hesitant step forward, reaching out a hand. Before he can touch it, the door pulls itself open with a deep, groaning sound, revealing nothing but absolute, impenetrable darkness inside. And in that darkness, something moves. It's tall, unnaturally thin, its face a distorted blur on the low-quality camera. Its arms are too long, hanging limply at its sides, before it rushes directly at the lens. The video cuts to screaming, then pure static. Miraculously, none of the team members were physically harmed, but something was taken from them. Not one of them could remember what they saw inside that room. The memory of those few seconds was completely, surgically erased from their minds. Today, Brightfall Hospital remains sealed. Not by a government order or a construction company. It's sealed by the townspeople themselves. They've boarded it up, chained the gates, and warned everyone to stay away. They know the stories. They've heard the sounds. On windy nights, residents who live nearby claim they can still hear distant crying, carried on the breeze, a sorrowful wail coming from the abandoned building. Some believe it's the ghost of Alara, the silent woman, still trapped and calling for help. But others believe the second set of scratch marks. They believe it's not Alara at all. They believe room 13 was never a room. It was a door, a gateway that was accidentally opened and now can't be closed. A door that is always listening, always waiting for someone to answer its call. So if you ever find yourself walking past an old, abandoned building late at night, and you hear crying coming from a place where no one should be, if you see a door that shouldn't exist, don't answer it. Don't try to look inside. And whatever you do, don't let it know you can hear it. Thanks for watching. If you want more stories that will follow you into your dreams, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notifications. Sleep well.